How do you feel reaching this milestone, 20th anniversary of IntelliJ IDEA?
Well, it's a huge term. It's like half of my life, and yeah, that's a great milestone. To be honest, when the whole thing was started, I was not thinking in such long terms, like only about what would be great to achieve in the nearest time, not in 20 years.
Could you have imagined when you were working on IntelliJ IDEA in 2001 that it would become such a popular IDE and that it would be used by developers from all over the world?
Well, short answer is no. I was very skeptical. And then I remember then they offered me a job and we tried to kind of talk about my compensation. And my idea was, no, you cannot afford to pay me this money because you have to solve this many a month, I said. And they were laughing. I mean, of course they were selling much more, but I was really skeptical about that because it turns out, yeah, it's a great product, but it's really hard to convince the whole world to use it. But I was proved wrong, and I'm really happy about that.
I never thought about like being so popular, and no, it wasn't in my mind. I just wanted people to use, and it be some substantial amount of people.
How did it start and why did you start working with IntelliJ IDEA?
At the time when it started, we are three founders. We all were programming in Java, and the tool which was the best on the market, and yeah, we all used it, was GBuilder from Borond. But we couldn't understand why it's the best tool, but it can't literally do anything with the code. Just it's like a plain text editor with a little bit of improvement. Like you have some basic code completion, a little bit of syntax highlighting, and that's it. Why can't I do very simple things like find where this function is used in my code or change its name everywhere and many other things. So and we understood that it's possible because the computers are quite powerful, and we could do all this and parse all the code and find all references like what the compiler does, but just not to compile the code. And we had many ideas like that. We started to discuss it with each other, and yeah, we realized that we could do it and make a much greater product. So that's how we decided to found a company and do this.
You were among the very first developers who joined the IntelliJ IDEA team in 2001. Can you tell us a bit more about how it all started for you?
The founders and the guys that joined the team before me was so fast that when I came to the team, it felt for me like product is already done and there isn't much to do because it's already functional, the whole idea. I was impressed beyond any imagination. It did have a thing called refactoring, which I didn't knew at that time. So you could extract method, and the guys were so patient at showing to me, look how it works, you can do this, and they transformed the code. It was so impressive at that time. I had my job that was well paid for. We were outsourcing company for some American firm doing a translator that was translated from some internal language to multiple other languages for multiple deployments. And specifically, I worked at the time on a compiler backend which translated to COBOL, Java, and also C. So I was yeah, so by chance we had a common colleague called Anya Ereshnikova. So she came to me and said that, look, I know the guys who are doing impressive things. Would you like to talk to them? And we did. And first, I didn't believe that this is serious. And I have my job. This is some kind of startup without any bright future, because what can you do? But the task was so interesting that I agreed that I will work for them part-time. So I said that, okay, so I will work for you like a day a week. And my initial task was code inspections. And then I started implementing an inspection called data flow analysis. And I've read a couple scientific papers on how to implement this, and it was so cool. I mean, the task was so rewarding. It was such a beautiful piece of a task, and the results was so impressive that, in fact, I not only I didn't work for them part-time, I was full-time, somehow managing to do my daytime job. Yeah, and the weekends and the nights, of course. And after like 6 months, I believe, of doing so, I said, yeah, this finally has to end, because I'm cheating on my other employer. It should stop. And I joined the team 6 months later. Since then, I actually made a lot of things. Code inspection turned out to be not just one inspection, but a whole bunch of analysis. And then there was a bright idea that analysis not only has to run when you require them, but they have to run on the fly, and it gives you another level of code quality if developers can find out what's wrong with their code immediately as they try them, and have time and context to understand what's going wrong and fix. And then I also work on an editor subsystem, implemented code folding, many other stuff. We decided that Java IDE is not enough, and we need to support other languages and other frameworks. And at that time, we actually support, in a kind of hacky way, XML, JSP, stuff like that. So I took a bullet and refactored all the code to implement the language API and unified parsing engine. So that turns out that's kind of make all the other IDEs possible in the future. First, first kind of demo language plugin was JavaScript support. It wasn't really popular at that time, but then it turns out that it was the right choice. And also Dima Zhemirov implemented Python support on top of that.
So how did it go?
Well, we were just writing code. I wouldn't say it was much things unexpected in terms of programming. It was more challenging how to market it, how to bring it to people. And because we did not have any experience with that, like selling our product to worldwide auditory ourselves, so that's why we decided to make kind of intermediate stop. Like we had already enough code to do some simple things like find references to some declaration or rename declaration, move it to another package. And we decided that of that functionality we can pack it into a simpler product. We called it Renamer. We did not expect it to have a tremendous success, of course, because the functionality was very limited. But for us it was very important to try it, how to sell it.
IntelliJ IDEA was initially named Renamer. So is it the pain points that you saw kind of being solved and you fell for it?
Yes, of course. I mean, before that, we had to do that manually. And when you see that the task you have to do manually for, I don't know, 10 days or a month, you can do in seconds, then you immediately fell in love with, not only saves you time, but it actually enables you to do certain things. Because if you understand that, okay, I'm going to spend a month doing this, then you actually don't do it. It's not only a question of productivity, it's actually enables you to work in a certain way or do things you won't be doing otherwise.
So, did you give yourself a time limit? Like when you started working on it, did you say, okay, let me give this product 3 months and let's see how it goes?
We had a limit, actually. It was financial limit because the company was founded with our own money. We all three we needed to have some money to live. So that was the limit. And the first version of the product, it took about 1 year to bring it to the market. It was the IntelliJ IDEA which we released in about a year. But actually, Renamer was not the only stop. We sold some copies of Renamer, but not many. And then we realized that probably it's not getting any popularity because it's the functionality is very limited, but it's a standalone product. You have to launch it, and so you do it in parallel with your coding environment, so it's not very practical for a simple task like finding some references. So we realized that we could make maybe even a smaller functionality, like just finding references, but put it in as a plugin to JBuilder, to this IDE. And if it's a plugin, it's always at your disposal. And even for a simple task, but you perform it many times a day, it can be a handy tool. And so we made another product from the same code we had already. We packed it in a plugin and released it, and it was called Code Search for JBuilder. And it was a bit more popular. We sold more copies. I don't remember the numbers, but it was something. But again, it was just to try it, how the sales process is going. So the main goal remained the IDE.
Was it hard to sell IntelliJ IDEA, or did things started falling in place as developers were trying it out, they liked it, and by word of mouth, it became more popular? How did it go?
When we released the first version of IDEA, we got some users. Actually, we got some users even earlier than that because we opened, we called it Early Access Program. We have this for our products even now. By the word of mouth, people came, used our product, and they gave us feedback, and we often implemented, like someone makes a suggestion, and maybe even next day he gets it in the next build. The first version, we got some users, not a lot. We understood that because we needed to release the version sooner, we did not have some of key features. For example, I remember that debugger was missing in the first version. So we knew that we need to actually produce a better version with more functionality. And I think we did it in like half a year or 8 months maybe after the first version. So it was IDEA 1.5. And that's the one which got a lot of popularity already. Right after the release, we got like tens and hundreds of users. It got very, very popular very quickly. Yeah, it was mostly the word of mouth. We did not place any advertisement like on the web or something. Just maybe if you, for example, remember there was some quite popular website. It was for developers, and developers liked our tool, and then we made a deal. Like we gave them our copies of our product for free, and they put the banner on the website. And we got quite a lot of users coming from this site because it was popular.
I'm also interviewing a lot of other developers for IntelliJ IDEA's 20th birthday, and they all were really happy that they get to hear back from either the support or the other people that they report any issue to, features or complaints.
I think it was like a feature of our company from the very beginning, because we were always listening to our users and we're trying to establish direct contact, like this early access program.
When I first came, it was a kind of funny story. On people were really proud about that. We have very close community in the news groups. When someone writes, I want this feature, and then the next day the ID comes out with the feature is implemented, we have an option for that, you know. And we're really proud that we could serve our customers' need and provide every option for every customer to any request. But later on, as we developed the IDE not for a handful of people, but for millions of people, it turns out that this is not really a viable approach. We started to have so many options that regular users or regular newcomers started to have a hard time to understand how this thing work. So some things on how the project should evolve or product should evolve had to be reconsidered, and I think we did a great job of that. Keep doing a great job, and we have a lot of things going forward on how to keep evolving.
Were there any moments where there were challenges and which were difficult to address?
I can remember one challenge. I lost back at the airport with my computer, and inside there was some source code which was not yet published anywhere else, and also I needed a new computer. So it was a bit of challenge. I think there was a very tough competition when Eclipse came. It was lacking a lot of things comparing to us, but it was free. And also they learned something from us, so they already took some of our features. And then it's much more difficult to convince many users that we offer a better value, because okay, you say we have this and that, and they say, oh, okay, Eclipse has it as well. We say, but you see, look at the details, it's not as good as ours. And they say, but it's free, and what we can do with that. So it was difficult competition, but then I think as a result, maybe it helped us to make a better product, because we created IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition, which was also free and open source, and this gave us much more popularity and more users, and created a platform on which we later on created many more IDEs.
IntelliJ IDEA was open sourced. It's also available as a free community version. Was this risky? How did you come up with the strategy, and were there any fears about its viability?
So at that time, we considered like everything is Eclipse or everything is free, and IntelliJ is the only paid IDE and closed source, and we had very questionable public image because of that. And so we had to make it clear that we can do open source as well, and we did. So the plan was that we can afford to lose like half of the customers, and it turns out that we didn't lose any. Sales in terms of revenue wasn't hurt. And 2009, you should remember, it was immediately after 2008 depression crisis. So it was absolutely right move, and it allowed us to build an ecosystem of our own tools as well as other companies' tools around this platform. And IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition is the best IDE, I think. It just doesn't have features which let you develop for the server side, of course, which is by incident the most of the Java developers do their job. They pay job. So yes, this was risky, but was the only right move I could make.
Yes, of course it was a tough decision, yeah. Because we did not know how it will go. and everything was at stock. So everything was at risk, but yeah, it went very well as a result.
I was talking with Slata, and she mentioned that one of the recent changes you implemented that functionality, I think April last year. So, do you still code?
I still code, not well, not much in idea. That was the the most recent feature I implemented just because I wanted it to be present, because I don't like to, when you need to change signature of the method, you invoke some dialog, and it's quite difficult to operate with. I prefer to make all the changes right in the editor. That's why I was talking about this feature maybe for many years, but it wasn't implemented, and I decided, okay, I will do it. It was just spontaneous effort from my side.
You started with inspections, which is one of the most loved feature by a lot of developers that I know. And when the results started showing, they were like, "Oh, this looks cool." Do you have any interesting stories around that part?
Yeah, actually, I do. I mean, after I implemented this inspection, then for almost 2 years, starting from that, part of my job was talking to colleagues which said, "Oh, you have a bug." So it shows there is an error in my code, but that's not true. I mean, that couldn't be true. No, your inspection is faulty. And then we sat and tried to analyze what's going on and how does it work. In the majority of the cases, the inspection was right, and there were indeed a bug in their code, not an inspection. Yeah, and after that, people kind of started to trust it, you know. And I should say that most of my colleagues are really skeptical, and they always see the problem in somewhere, someone else code first. Yeah. So having something which is you don't have an ability to argue is just a code. It tells you you have a problem. You can't argue that is a good thing.
I also read that you mentioned that you just can't live without coding, and you try
Mm-hmm.
to do that today.
Oh yeah. So it turns out I can live without coding, but I just don't just feel right, and then I need it sometimes. Unfortunately, I do code, but unfortunately not as much as I would love to. And still hope that I helpful in this role. And yeah, I do. My only language this time is Kotlin. I only code in Kotlin. Uh, so kind of my horizon shrinks somewhat.
So when did you wanted to start programming? Was it early in your career or when you were in school, college?
Yes, maybe 12 years or something like that. I decided that I'll be a programmer. Yeah, so I I just decided that I like it so much that I will do it, and never changed my decision after that.
So what language did you start programming in?
Well, actually, my first programming experience was with the calculator. So it was a calculator which allowed to write some small programs inside with some basic commands, and I made some stuff in it, even some like games or something like that. And then later on, I think my father, he brought me some materials about BASIC, but I never really programmed in it because I did not have computer to do it. So the main problem is in my childhood was the lack of access to the computer. And the first time I got my own computer, it was like I was in the last 2 years of the school, and it was a computer without any software. Like, it was very basic. It had very few tools inside, and everything else you had to write yourself, and they did not have any compilers or anything. So I wrote it in assembler, everything. I learned some languages before that, but not much programming because I did not have my own computer. Like I remember reading the book of Strauss-Trup for C++. It was such an interesting reading just by itself, not even programming.
You started your career as a developer and now you lead the company as the CEO. And that's an impressive career path, I would say. Do you have any secrets to your success?
Uh, you know, I didn't know how this happened actually, because I never wanted to. In the first place, when I became a team lead for IntelliJ ID, I didn't wanted that actually. So I never wanted to become a manager or something. So I'm a programmer. I know how to program. But then it turns out that, you know, I understand that as a team we can do more, and sometimes teams need not a management. I would say we really flat, but teams need some focus, and to have this focus, we need to lead the conversation. And I think that what has happened. And the same thing happened actually with me becoming a CEO. And I didn't have in plans ever, but it happened. So I cannot really share any secrets, and I'm not really sure that it is a success, because I would say that as a developer, I would also have had a great career.
So you're not really focusing on the problems, but on the solutions. So that I think is one of the secrets of success that I would say.
Oh, I should think about that. Thank you. I mean, maybe it's going to be useful for me when in a way, maybe I'm stuck somewhere. Then I have to think about your words, not think about the problem, think about the solution.
I know that first years that you were working with JetBrains, you were also teaching at the St. Petersburg State University. And how did
Mhm.
you manage to juggle those roles? Also, did your work at the university help you with your work at JetBrains?
I started teaching before I joined JetBrains, so I just didn't stop teaching when I joined JetBrains. And it turned out very fruitful, because many of my students are uh, now work for the company. It's one of the things that I'm proud of. And For me, it wasn't really a difference, because when you're passionate about the code and you want to tell people how to program, then you can have a conversation with someone who's really knowledgeable, or something who is only starting their career, and it's actually kind of the same conversation. And it helped me to understand that, for instance, some of the things in our product are not really uh, as good as I thought they are, because I saw people stumbling upon some issues which were kind of tricky, but then it turns out that we can improve as a product to make them more approachable. Uh, yeah, and also it gave me a lot of not only a lot of insights, but also a lot of positive energy. But Finally, it appears that it takes too much work, and again, both JetBrains and teaching was very demanding, and I had to choose at some point. So I did choose JetBrains.
Any feature or any part of idea that you really like or are proud of for the current edition or recent editions?
And there are many changes that make it better, better user experience, better user interface. That's it. So I can mention anything in particular. For example, okay, this feature that we discussed already, which I implemented for changing method signature, I use it like every day, I think, almost, because it's very quick. You just edit signature and apply this thing without invoking anything, any dialogues. It's it it's a tool I couldn't live without. Because how would I program? No way. I don't know any other tool to do it, to do programming nowadays.
What are your favorite IntelliJ IDEA features?
Instant highlighting in the editor, online code inspections. Not because of I made it or started it, because I really think that it is important, and I use a lot. Then all the navigation features, which I go to class, go to file, go to symbol, finding path I use a lot, because it's quick. Find usages, of course, and preview. I forgot the name. Preview declarations, kind of that stuff. So all the navigation features, I need them. Git support, of course, and the debugger is absolutely useful. Unfortunately, it is really hard to debug Kotlin code with coroutines right now. So I'm dreaming for something more usable than we have right now. Debugging asynchronous code is a problem. We tried to implement as many refactorings as possible just by reading the book, and it turns out I don't use them much. So half of the refactoring features might actually be gone, I think. But like extract method, inline, extract variables, stuff like that, are handy features. I use them every day because that's not the way of refactoring. More, it's a way to actually write the code. Yeah, so I mentioned dependency analysis. I think that I don't use it every day, but without this tool, in some cases, it's a nightmare. I don't know how to do stuff, and it allows for to keep this code base in shape, because keeping proper dependencies and minimize the surface between the modules is very important. So we use it a lot.
So, the last question in the rapid fire round is, which feature do you use the most?
I think it's syntax aware selection. And we have this productivity guide, which I managed to lose after breaking into a new computer. But I remember that one was most used, because you operate with code as a text a lot, and you have to select a proper range for that. And syntax aware selection is really handy.
What is the spirit of JetBrains and what are its core values?
Well, I can talk. I can only speak for myself. For me, it always been fun, meaning that you're doing something which you enjoy a great deal, while at the same time you understand that you provide a great value for the users, for the customers, and this understanding kind of doubles that fun, doubles that enjoyment, and the spirit is, I think, to keep going and always challenge what you know, and always see how to do the next thing. And at the same time, I think that we are very friendly as a company from inside. It's some say that it is just a big family. It is true to some extent, of course, because we are 1,500. It's really hard to manage 1,500 people as a family. But it really, I mean, it's great pain for me when I see that people not kind of respect each other sometimes, because maybe they don't know each other enough. And it's great enjoyment when I see that people collaborate and help each other, and proud of each other's work. Uh, I think that these things are really important at JetBrains. And I feel that many people, if not most, I think most people, if not all, feel like JetBrains is is not their employers, but it's like a company of their own. They don't own any shares, of course, but uh, uh, we always say we did that or we are going to do that. It's not that my employer is going to work on this project. You know, it's very personal attachment, and I think that it is important. And I would like to this to be kept on for as long as possible.
Absolutely. So there's one more question regarding JetBrains that I want to ask. JetBrains is proud to have, as you said, a flat structure. We have few managers. I hardly have met any managers here, and everybody's opinions matters. Is it difficult to lead such a company?
Yeah, it is. It is hard from my one side, but I think it is important to keep it this way, despite being hard. You know, I remember when we tried to develop a thing called Space Now. Uh, for a couple of years, if not more, everyone stopped me in a corridor and said, "So what is this thing called space? What does it do? Why we need it? How is it going to work? No, we will not be able to sell it to anyone. No, the market doesn't need it." And you know, these things keep going on and on and on. And yes, you have to be persistent if you feel that this is the right way to go. But at the same time, being challenged is not a bad thing. You know, you've given a perspective, maybe how people going to be seeing these things on the market, and having multiple voices, even if not always pleasant, is a good thing. You know, that is what diversity is for instance. You know, it's challenging, but it is important. And you know, I understand that all of those people make their own decisions. Being developers, they still decide on the product features they develop. And so I understand that I'm talking to people with real knowledge of the domain and real knowledge of their customer base. Uh, and there is no need to kind of force them to do whatever I want because they know better.
As you also mentioned in one of the videos that I watched about the dog fooding. So, developers at JetBrains use their tools to develop the tools that they create. So they know the pain points. They also test out the product that they're building. So that is really interesting in our case.
Absolutely. It is important though to understand that dog fooding has its limitations, and it's sometimes easy to fall into a trap that you know all, you know everything, and overfeed for a particular scenario. Uh, there is a joke that, which is only partly a joke, that IntelliJ IDEA is the best idea in the world for developing IntelliJ IDEA.
And regarding the flat structure, I remember also mentioned some time back that people move around from the role of development to managing the product to going into the marketing.
Absolutely. I mean, after I stopped working in the IntelliJ team, I immediately saw so many shortcomings of the product, like even how this even works. I said when in and open some other project, and you know you should always change the perspective. It is important. It is a problem if you stay on a certain thing for too long because you know your horizon shrinks, and it is important to have. Perspective to be able to make something useful.
The journey of IntelliJ IDEA over the past 20 years. So, how would you define its journey from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I mean, 20 years is a lot, and it's way more than the lifespan for most of the products and projects in the software industry. And I think that with IntelliJ, we managed to find out the uh, not only the way to make it even better with each one new release, but also to find more opportunities for how we can use it in some other way. Like for instance, we've managed to refactor it all the time and manage the dependencies and models in there to use it in TeamCity as a static code analysis tool, or in AppSource as an engine which provides code intelligence for the code review. And of course, we managed to develop a platform which enables IDEs for other frameworks in other languages, which are most of them are successful in their niches as well. And so I think the solution to that is a constant evolution. We do not take the things for granted, and trying to evolve the code to keep it in a good shape, to always make sure that it performs the best.
I think surviving and getting more and more popularity during 20 years of our history is a great achievement. So yes, so that's just what I wanted to say. Yeah, that's the achievement. Happy birthday, IntelliJ IDEA.
So, happy birthday, IntelliJ IDEA.
Thank you so much, Max. A pleasure to have you and a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much, Valentin. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you.